We are calling the meeting to order. It's 7:05, Tuesday now. Agenda considerations reserved for changes to the agenda. No changes. Comments and questions from the public? No questions. All right, next. We will now continue with our town plan, cultural resources, demographics, and housing. Go ahead, take it away.
All right. Let's get this started here. Whoa, why am I way down there? Let's get to the top. It did make it a lot easier. Thank you. All right. So for anyone paying attention to the agenda, we are going to return to housing. Start there. That's where we wrapped up last time. And then we're going to try to hit some cultural resources and demographics. I have a few slides in here that are really just meant for anyone that is new to these town plan meetings. We don't have a very large audience, so I'm going to go through them very, very fast. You guys are going to be able to write them and say these very shortly because you'll have seen them a few times. But we're going to start every meeting off with these just in case. So, what is our town plan? Town plan, as a reminder, is the vision document for the town of Colchester. It sort of sets everything we want to be. We do these every 8 years, but our vision is not limited to 8 years. Our vision can run anywhere from the next year to the next 50 years. But these are things that hopefully can be achievable within 8 years. But when we write some of those action statements, but it is a long-term plan. Has quite a few chapters in it. We've been going through these chapters and topics. Tonight, we will be talking about two specific ones, but there are, the plan does include everything from natural and cultural resources, parks and rec, energy, transportation, utilities, economic development, municipal services, housing, etc. So like I said, we revise and adopt these every 8 years. We have a large, open, transparent process to get there. We advertise our meetings pretty widely as we can. And for those of you good with first grade math, it was adopted in 2019, so we are due again in 2027. This is my disclaimer that I always put out there. It's, one thing I wish people, would understand broadly is the plan is not a regulatory document, but it does set the foundation for our regulations. And that is important. It also sets the foundation for even regulations outside of Colchester. That includes Act 250 and Act 248 hearings, where town plans carry weight in energy hearings or Act 250 hearings. So why do we have a town plan? You don't have to have one, fun fact. But if you do not have one, you do not qualify for quite a few federal or state programs. Everything from municipal planning grants, state designation programs. We don't have downtown and village tax credits, but that could be something we could pursue. You could not pursue that if you do not have this plan. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities funding, brownfield redevelopment grants, community development, affordable housing funds. It also allows for the collection of impact fees. We have two, recreation and education, that we collect on residential structures only. So real quick, in the Where Are We map, here we are. We did a big public engagement kickoff early this year. We had a softer one sort of before that in the fall. And we are in the middle of holding these public meetings on topics and other areas within the plan. When that wraps up, the commission will really dig deep and rewrite everything that's in there. So that's when we do a lot of the wordsmithing. We'll be doing it as we go, but we'll not necessarily be doing it holistically or sharing it too much before then. Then it has to go through a series of reviews. This is the Regional Planning Commission, which has a required review, and their boards and subcommittees will also review that as well. PC has a hearing, so the select board has a hearing, and then hopefully we get to adoption. All of those things look like they're just a small part of this, but they actually take quite a bit of time because most of those hearings have to be legally and duly warned. Our plan does expire in March. So how are we going to get there? Well, you can see with this little yellow box, this is where we are today. There were some other meetings before this, but just to keep this manageable. Here we are on May 5th. We did have a meeting yesterday morning for economic development. Today we're going to be returning to Housing Part 2, which we started in March, adding in newly cultural resources and demographics. In 2 weeks, anyone who wants to follow along can see us at the rec center. We'll be meeting an hour earlier than usual. We'll be starting at 6. We will have the superintendent of schools there to talk about education. And we'll also be talking about parks and recreation. So the setting is definitely fitting. So here we are. This is the index. This is the chapters that make up our town plan. Most of them are pretty intuitive to figuring out what they mean. So our homes is our housing chapter. The who we are is our demographics chapter. So those are the two we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going really fast, so everyone good? Slow down, back up. All right. Because it's been so long since we talked about housing, long being like 8 weeks ago, I'm going to do a quick recap. I don't have all the slides from the last presentation, but I picked out a few just to remind us of where we are when we're talking about housing. So these are our number of housing units, and this goes through, for anyone who can't necessarily see the fine print, from 1960 all the way up to 2024. That's the most recent data available for us. And you can see, where the big jumps were. 60s and 70s were housing booms in Colchester and probably out throughout the state. It has tapered off, as you can see, but we are still growing. Last 4 years, roughly 300 housing units. And I'll show you what that actually means in a minute. So we're up to 7,853 housing units. And I highlighted for you here 10.4% of the county's total housing stock. And I highlight that for a reason. So hold on to that number, 10.4. We're going to come to it a little bit later.
A pen or pencil. I can't find anything. I'm sorry. Sure. I usually have about 5 of them. Thank you very much.
So this is a slide you've seen before, just sort of showing what we've been building. So even when we have this big increase, why did we have it? So this green are the multi-unit buildings, and the blue, and those tend to be the ones that are most inconsistent, just because it just takes one building to equal 60 units. And that's why I think you see the most inconsistency across the board in that. Whereas the, single family residential units are a little less fluid. So that comes out to, in the last 25 years, about 64 per year. We hear from people that hundreds and thousands are being built all the time, but it's not actually true. There's 64 a year. That we were doing 200 a year, but it was back before I think everybody was on this commission, and maybe even not in Colchester. So worth looking at. So occupied housing units by building type. And this is, sort of similar, but without the same time scale. So most of our housing stock is single family detached. I think we're going to continue to see this change because we're not building as much of that now. Underneath it in the orange, single family attached. And then you've got your multifamily small, mid-size, large, and then mobile homes. We've talked about this before. Mobile homes. Colchester has more mobile homes than any other community in the state. And by far any other in Chittenden County. And they do make up a fair amount of our housing stock. They definitely make up a lot of our affordable housing stock. So that's that purple on the bottom. Household makeup. You can see here, these nationally, and Colchester's following the same trend that is happening nationally. We're seeing a rise in 1-person and 2-person households and a decrease in larger households. So the bulk of our housing types right now are in these 2-person households. But the one is definitely climbing, and these are reducing. And we're the same as national trends.
If there's an ADU, is that counted, is that combined with this? Like if it's 2 people in one part of the house and 2 people in another, is that a 4-person, or would that be 2 and 2?
Yeah, if that ADU has an address, they could potentially be sent a questionnaire or a visit from the census, much like anybody else. If they don't have their own address or it's not a reported ADU, they probably wouldn't show up in here. But most of the data that we have is self-reporting. So they'll be asked a question of how many people are in your household. Real quickly, again, all these are slides that you've seen before, but just to remind us of where we were, median home sale price. If you bought a house in 2001, congratulations. You saw a very nice increase. Same again, a little bit of settling between the 10 years between 2016 and 2006, but really after 2016, that's where we saw this really big increase. We're aligning this. This is not unique to Colchester. This is not about anything Colchester has done. This is what we saw, across the state and even across the nation, with some markets, an exception to that, but for the most part. So the median sale price for primary residence in Colchester has increased 50% just in the last 6-7 years. That is now up to officially $500,000 or $500,000. And that's the median. I don't know if we have data about average, but this is telling us that 50% of homes actually cost more than that. So that's something, so we keep in mind. Stop me at any point if you want to add anything, Zach. So what about affordability? I went through, if anybody wants to see this entire presentation, you can go to the March Planning Commission meeting. There were many more slides on this, but I picked out just a few to refresh our memory today. So our housing affordability compared against other towns, this is with a standardized grand list. There's a whole process that goes into it. Watch the meeting from March if you want to be refreshed on this, but just trying to compare, where we stand in certain categories of affordable, very affordable, to other towns. I mentioned earlier that we have a lot of mobile homes or manufactured homes. You can see just how many more when we look at this chart. Milton, I think, is even second in the state. So there's really just not a lot of them otherwise. So we look at affordability in a lot of different ways. And one key measure that is used is how much of your income is spent on housing. HUD recommends that you don't spend more than 30%. Anything more than that is considered unaffordable to you. So based on the data we had, Colchester is just under that, but barely. County average being about 35% of income spent on housing. This study was done 3 years ago. I'm willing to bet that it has changed in those 3 years and that we are above 30% now. when we talk about this affordability, one of the key takeaways is that if you're using that 30% of income on housing expenses, housing costs are unaffordable for 28% of all Colchester households. So that is why everyone is talking about housing. Yeah, real quick, as I said about, manufactured units, this is us. We're the big blue one. There's Milton, and there's all the rest of the other towns. Or Milton's in the gold there. So 31% of seasonal residents as well, which probably doesn't surprise anybody if you've ever been around in Colchester. I think there's just not a lot of other towns in the county that have quite as many as we do. Just a reminder from our survey, hopefully the full results will be coming to you soon, but we asked people, why do you live in Colchester? What do you like about it? And a whopping 8 people told us it was housing access and affordability. This is out of over 300 respondents. So I don't think many people in Colchester are finding it affordable. Something else from the survey is we asked people, what's important to you? What parts of the town plan are most important? Ignore the graph here on the right. The way it comes out, it doesn't line up, but they are the same. They're meant to show here. They just don't line up because they were doubled. But housing affordability was the second most important value to people who responded to our survey, education being the first. So I think people recognize that it is a challenge, but also that it's important. Lastly, when we talk about housing, I'll say that the municipal housing targets, we've talked about these, they're still changing. I'm not going to give you updated numbers yet because I think they're still not quite final. I don't think we've seen major changes in them, but as of September of last year, in the fall, the Regional Planning Commission, at the direction of the state, allocated out a growth target amongst its towns. The state gave a target to the region gave a target to the towns. The assignment made to Colchester is somewhere between 639 and 2,500 roughly units by 2050. Now, if you're looking at this, you're probably like, that is a very big range. And that's because when they put together their targets, they did a low range, a middle range, and a high range, and each one achieved something different. The high range supposedly meets all of the needs of housing in the state and region. The low is, I can't remember exactly. Do you remember? But essentially the low range is to keep up and start to get ahead of the demand. And the middle is meeting the needs essentially of most people, but not all people. So you take that middle range, you look at that, that's about 26 to 98 units on average a year. If you have a good memory, you'll remember that I said we build about 64 per year. So the middle of that is pretty consistent. I don't think we're looking at huge changes in what is expected based on what we're already building. But that does require us to continue with the status quo of building at least, and producing as much housing as we have been without dropping. So we'll talk more about housing targets at some point. I'm sure that'll come back to you. So that is all stuff we talked about before. That's to refresh your memory. These are new questions for you. And you probably heard me say when we were just meeting yesterday that there are topics that are going to transcend different chapters of the plan. And that's going to happen in a lot of areas. And there's a question that we've talked about that starts with housing, but they're going to continue. You're going to talk about them when you talk about geographic areas, I'm sure. You can talk about them in mapping exercises. You might even talk about them when you talk about transportation or energy. So the questions I put forth to you now to sort of start to think about and talk about, because as I mentioned to Sarita yesterday, it's time for the town via the commission to start talking about goals, not just hearing things, but to give us direction for what you want in this plan. So we talk about new housing. We talk about the W's. I think I already did the why part. You don't have to answer that. But where and how and who does not necessarily, it definitely doesn't mean like the person or the demographics of the person, but it does mean like what kind of housing types, who are we building for? What kind of accessibility is being provided? Other factors to talk about that are related to housing are wastewater. Probably not something the Planning Commission can solve, but it is always something to keep in mind. And whether or not, some things that other communities talk about a lot is a targeted housing growth rate. And that can take many forms. It can be the form of number of units per year. It can be a percentage. It can be, let's keep up, let's do exactly what we're doing now and no change it. It can be, very much more broad and say, let's increase it, let's decrease it. But so you have a lot of options when you talk about something like that.
Do you want to discuss this now, or do you want to wait presentation and go back?
I would recommend it now, but that's of course your call.
I'll tell you what I hear a lot of is, I was part of it at the time when we did the PUDs, go down to 1.5 acres to get more infill. Well, now somehow with the ADUs and all the other, our infill's starting to get annoying to people. We're putting houses, units where people do not understand why we're allowing it to happen, because it's already too dense, and then we stick another unit in there. I don't know if we should address, especially when you start to get down to this end of town, Porter's Point in that area. I remember way back, it was all about those are the good places to put infill. But now we've done that for at least 8 to 10 years, I would say. And our growth center is supposed to take over, especially when it comes to rental units. So I'm not sure about that. I hear more of it lately. And I don't hear it here, obviously, but when I get out there and talk to people, I heard it again this weekend about we allowed, I understand why it was allowed, but and I see it myself, we'll allow a building to go in, the driveway's barely enough to get a car in, and then they back out into the road. So I don't know if we need to pull that in. I think we should look at it. I think we're at the point where I know it's all about growing and housing, but it comes a time when you have quality of life, and I think we're kind of, in certain areas of town, we're getting over the edge. That's my thought on that one.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? That seems like it fits in the how.
Okay.
So, these are questions, and I will work to pull up in the existing plan whether or not infill is mentioned there at all, and find a place for you to share if you guys agree with that. Figure out where that would go. But anybody want to respond?
Just the allowable uses, more or less. If we have like rezoning of certain areas and some agricultural, or along those ways to kind of allow for more housing. If it's there's no more agricultural happening there. I mean, there's kind of like to your point, instead of sticking every quarter acre lot, adding another, making a double house lot, or adding housing, or buying houses, tearing them down, putting duplexes in, kind of relooking at some of the areas that are for potential development, I guess. They'll kind of spread it out as well.
Yeah.
So you mentioned ag. Are there other areas where you would envision
overall,
new development?
The language for changing, the this different like zoning regions, being able to kind of like adapt them, not every town plan, but kind of going through with, changing them as we kind of go along, as the need changes, as the demand changes, because right now we're kind of stuck with certain areas, the zoning is what it is on it, not being able to change it, from the planning committee. I think we should some sort of language adopt to kind of remedy some of the issues with that.
Let me ask you a question for a response. Are there parts of town, and you can talk specifically about a geography, you can talk about a type of use or a type of zoning. Are there places within Colchester that you don't think should have housing?
I mean, I think a lot of it is already kind of dictated.
And that's to all of you.
I think it's dictated to the wetland boundaries and, certain conservations of some sorts, to certain land districts and whatnot. But I think with house, just going towards like Middle Road, those areas where I think it's like what, a 10-acre minimum for a lot. So you have a house in 10 acres, you have a house in 10 acres, and you can do a PUD subdivision on it. But again, those are the areas of future development that I think could be looked at that are regulated heavily. And I feel a lot of the areas for future growth are kind of like stuck in almost like a purgatory of zoning regulations where you could do stuff because you have the land, you have the the type of soils for the septic, everything else, but you can't have you can have like a single family dwelling where you put a secondary dwelling on it, but that's about the extent of it. Without going to big development, you do like a PUD subdivision, but you can't subdivide the line to like 2-3 separate parcels to kind of create certain type of housing developments without going through significant, planning. And,
So is it the how to you or the where?
I think kind of both. I think the allowable uses on where, and then the how, so they kind of go together with it, with the regulations and the language that's in the town zoning rules.
And we can get into this more when you get into the specific land use chapters. But just having the broad conversation right now is sort of it's good feedback.
So, in the State House, we're doing a lot of talking, especially on environment, about 181 and 325. And so I kind of like the idea of being somewhat intentional about land use. And I look at some of the areas, in terms of village centers, downtown, planned growth, transition and infill, rec areas. I don't know what enterprise is, and I don't know what hamlets are. Rural general, rural ag and forestry, rural conservation. I kind of like just thinking about it, not saying this is it, but just kind of thinking in those terms of concentrated growth, and then trying like the old kind of patterns of Vermont, is concentrated in the downtown of the villages, and then the rest of the area surrounding it was rural, or farming or conservation land. So I'm not talking about that people couldn't build or anything like that, but I just think if we could just try to be very intentional, because I feel like the timing right now for Colchester and Vermont, it's essential to really think this through and get this right for the next 10 years. I think it's the timing right now, especially for Colchester, is important that we think, we all, and hopefully the community will get involved in this conversation as well. But I like the concentrated kind of housing where people can, walk and their side. It's kind of the smart growth, in terms of transportation, access to schools, or being able to walk, not have to always drive places. And I think we have that at Severn's Corners. I think I like Severn's Corners as our growth center. I think that seems to be developing nicely, and I see the Village Scoop, the library, that to me is a village. I see Prim Road and Price Chopper, that area seems to be a village. The Bay Area to me seems to be a village-ish area, the Fort area. And then I don't know, I'd love to hear what people think the downtown is. I mean, is it,
We don't have one.
we don't have a downtown.
It was Winooski.
I know, it was Winooski. Do you think it's where the municipal offices, like this building?
We don't
and-
have
We don't have
downtown.
downtown.
We don't have a town. Okay, so
I
We're
don't
very
think Colchester would kind of like comply to that vision because we don't have a downtown district and because everything is so stretched out.
Yeah.
Then you have clusters of,
so the village, kind
yeah,
of more the
so it's the
village.
same thing like doing the public transportation that you're, talking about. I don't think we'll ever have it because it's so, like I said, everything is so different in different parts of Colchester. The
Yeah.
Bay is different from the village is different from like the Cafe area and
Yeah.
whatnot, so.
So more think in terms of kind of village areas, growth center, recreation, and then rural areas, different rural
Pretty
areas.
much, yeah.
So Sarita, just to address what you had started to talk about with,
Ian is talking into the microphone, and so her voice is coming out of these. None of the other voices are coming out of these, so the note taker is very frustrated.
No, I didn't say frustrated. So you're very well.
Which leads to frustration.
So she's really close to her microphone.
Okay. Sorry.
I've had a lot of practice.
There you go.
Thank you.
So you're talking about where not to build. I would see, because we talked about this 5 different areas. One definitely, and it's because of the way the place looks, as you get out in the Northeast Kingdom, when past Mill Road, where all the dirt roads are, we have a lot of little fiefdoms of 10-acre lots. They kind of fit, and the road isn't really built to take on more traffic. Then you get towards East Road, where we have some new housing going up. They could actually develop into housing lots, not rental unit lots, but housing lots, because the road can take that pressure. So if I was going to, yeah, for the traffic and the road would justify it, the area would justify it. When we get out to Colchester Pond and all that area, to build more, concentrate that more, I just don't think I don't think people in that area would be happy about it for one, but I just don't think we have the infrastructure that would support it properly. But I just think if we are going to grow more, if we're getting too dense, which I think we are in this end of town, we're supposed to look more at the growth center. But for housing, if we're just jamming them, jamming 4 houses in a lot that already has 2 houses because we're taking everybody's backyards away, I'm not seeing that as a quality way of building myself. I would see something like East Road where there's one right now that shoots out, there's 2-3 houses on it. It looks to me like it's going to support a few more someday. And I could easily see that building 4 more houses on there, not even breaking a sweat.
So super quick to address Sarita's mention of so she's talking about the regional future land use map. You guys saw it quite a while ago, but you will probably see it again soon. That's the very early version of that. It's this one that's over my shoulder here. The great thing about that map is it does create these categories which can guide local planning, and I think that's the hope. The downside of that map is, though it is called a future land use map, when these things were slotted on here, they look to what was existing and not what is planned. So you have to take it probably with 80% guidance and 20% reservation, because you might not be planning what you have now. And actually, that's why we're sitting here, because you may very well want to plan something different than you have now. So that is one of the drawbacks of those plans. But by and large, I think the hope from the state and from the region is that we do use a map similar to this to sort of guide where the protected areas are. Now, if anyone's been following, you know that those protected areas that were supposed to be this tier 3 are not going to be designated anytime soon. But they can't help but not be designated because they're going to be sort of the leftovers, right? Of the things that are not necessarily in those other tiers. So,
And we are passing out a bill this week, 325, that is going to have the land use review board, get input from the community, really do an extensive outreach to Vermonters about what they believe should be protected, in terms of, what lands and what areas should be conserved. A deer yard's important, or forest blocks important, but there'll be a lot of public engagement. It's not like they're just going to come out and say this. They do want to hear from Vermonters about, instead of tier 3, what do you want to do to conserve certain parts of Vermont?
mm-hmm.
So,
So back to the question of sort of where, you're of course welcome to sort of freeform your answers on this, but just getting back to things that we've heard in the last 3 or 4 years. I think Vladimir started to sort of, talk about this. Your hands have been tied. Anytime someone's come to you, you haven't really had the conversation because you couldn't have the conversation because your plan says no changes to zoning during the course of the plan for so many years. But just getting to the questions that have come to you in the areas, we've talked about Mill Pond Road, so that's an ag zoning. Now, again, this is not meant to be a property, but generally in that area, you'll have to consider like how much land do you want to save for low density use, for agricultural use. If all of it gets turned in, will you regret that eventually? Resources aside. The other one that you've heard about that I think is ripe to start the conversation about, what about those zoning districts that do not currently allow housing? How do you feel about changing those? So for example, you've got the 2 zoning districts that are at exit 16. We have a business zoning district and a commercial zoning district. Is that the full name? Neither of those allow housing right now, of any sort, singles, multis, etc. And I think this plan is the time to discuss and put to rest, at least for the next 8 years, whether or not housing is appropriate in those zoning districts. And this is one of those conversations that's going to transcend meetings. But I think now is a good one for you to start kicking off your thoughts about whether or not, housing. And when we get to the how, these are not things you necessarily have to figure out as part of your town plan. You can give yourself direction to amend your bylaws to talk about the how. So for example, if you say, we do want to allow some housing, but we really need some, bumpers on that. We need some guardrails so that it doesn't become 100% housing. I'm making that up. You don't have to feel that way. The how and what that looks like, it's not something you have to figure out right now. It can be something that you say, generally, we like it or we don't like it. Or we like it if it's tempered by X, Y, and Z. Not specific, but like promote, preservation of lots designated to economic development, for example. It's a very broad statement, or you could say, we don't care. Market, not that you don't care, but we don't want to have restrictions. Let the free market do what the free market's going to do. And if it's housing right now, again, I'm not recommending these things. I'm just letting you know that you have your options and what they would look like, in sort of the broad sense. So I think that's sort of a question that's worth kicking off in the housing chapter. We still have a whole demographics thing to get through, but if Rich agrees, do you guys want to chat about that for a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Those
still
are the
on.
2 areas.
For me, it's the same. I'm not big on putting housing in commercial. I know we heard even yesterday about offices aren't the big thing right now. something will transition for that in business. It just has to. We have to have a balance. And I have seen, I mean, if you have the old fashioned downtown and you got your general store and a couple houses and your feed mart and a whole bit, but that was 1920s. Today you build a residential piece of property next to a commercial and somebody's upset, they raise their hand, and before you know it, everybody's suing everybody, and the business gets a black eye and the town gets a black eye because we allowed residential into an area that really shouldn't have been, my idea shouldn't have gone. So I'm not real big on change. Like as 16, perfectly fine with no.
I think we
houses
had
in
a
that
discussion on that last summer when we were amending the
Yep.
use of tables on it. So we kind of pretty much eliminated exit 16 anyway from any kind of residential development.
Huh.
So that was, yeah, we had it.
That was the
we've had
emergency
those
housing.
discussions, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of saying, well, if those buildings are pretty, I don't know how much percentage they're empty. Kathy probably knows, but I mean, if they're 75% empty, are those businesses going to come back? Is that building going to be used? I think it's worth looking at, and if it's something that there's a market to put housing, like on the upper floors where they have the views, and people would come. I don't say changing it all, but maybe structuring it in such a way that it would allow a certain percentage of housing in empty buildings. And I am talking about Water Tower Hill here. I think it's worth relooking at.
The only thing I see with that is exactly what you gave for example. If we allow that to go to housing, even that top floor, you lose commercial.
Yep.
And say you have a big commercial business that wants to roll in, you'll never have that opportunity.
Absolutely. But do we want to continue having empty space for the next 8 to 20 years? I mean,
And I have to say, one of my first meetings here at the planning commission was when we had the architects come in from Dave Burke
yeah.
saying that the people that own those buildings just can't do anything with them. And even before COVID, they couldn't rent the office spaces, and COVID just put a kibosh on it. And we're in 2026. People are working remote now. There's not a lot of office spaces that are in demand here. And I just want to add something to that too. We had some kids come in from Colchester and Winooski, and they had some great ideas for that area of connecting Colchester and Winooski because the school is right there, and with the, I don't know how, still can't picture how this diamond diversion thing, I'm sorry, I try to picture this in my head and I just cannot, but like some sort of connection area and having, I think it has so many possibilities, but if we just keep it the way it is, I just think there are empty buildings up there. There are some, you have to have your dermatologist that needs an office. There are some places that do need offices, but there's a lot of empty buildings up there or empty spaces up there that just seem like a waste to me. And I think with this diamond diversion thing, I just think there's opportunity there. I really do believe that.
Right. What I see on that though is we have a transition. Now you go down to Tilly Drive, place is booked. Go off of Kennedy Drive where they have medical offices and eye doctors, dentists, places are all booked. They're all full, period. Up on Water Tower Hill, they do not want to shift gears yet. They just don't want to do it. Just the same way we got the growth center. They do not want to build buildings up by the road because they say nobody will get in those lots on the bottom floor for businesses. Yeah, you see that being built all over Williston, that exact example. And it's a great road between exit 16 and 17. But if you don't put the effort in, it's not going to happen. Those guys are definitely of the mindset, it's offices or it's houses. They don't seem to want to build into something new. I don't know if somebody's to be forced to have them do it. I mean, they sitting in a building with empty rooms. How long are you going to sit without deciding? It's time to make a
It'd be
change.
interesting to hear from the business community on Water Tower Hill, to hear from them and just.
So far, they said if I can't put an office up there, I need a house or a housing unit.
Well, I mean, that's why you have to look at it as what type of housing. Because
Yeah.
we're not talking about building a house in the middle of the the tall buildings. We're
Yeah.
talking about reusing the buildings, changing the occupancy from business to housing. Not all of it, but the mixed use. I think it's, well, not even infill. I mean, we've got empty buildings. What are you infilling with?
Yeah.
It's utilizing space.
I remember.
We got someone interested now.
So
State your name.
I'm Evan Taylor. I live on Colonial Drive, but I'm also a commercial lender with Green Mountain Credit Union. And I work with the Lake Champlain Chamber on the Regional Advisory Committee. This is something we talk about a great deal. And I worked for some time out in Williston, right by Taft Corners. And I keep coming back to that as an example of how to do it right. And not on the side where we have, Dick's Sporting Goods and all that. But on the other side where you have your, was that the Healthy Living, you've got Jersey Mike's and all that. But then behind it, they have 300, 400 units of residential, an incredible amount. They're all occupied and nobody realizes it's there. How many times do you drive by that and think that there might be 10,000 people living back there? We don't, because it's well designed but it's a combination of the two. And that housing is driving the retail and commercial that's succeeding, along the main drag. Every time I go by, Water Tower Hill, I kind of look at it and we've got these empty, holes in our teeth, staring at us along the road, and then trees. And that's great. Trees behind it. There's no community. There's no anything. You just see empty buildings and you see undeveloped area. There's an opportunity there where we could, and on that side with the hill, it's a little tricky, right? It's a little tighter, but to bring in some of that commercial in front, residential behind, a little more, there are a lot of like the single family connected or multifamily that they do in Taft Corners, but something like that, that isn't really, we're not creating a big visual impact, but we can use that screen of the commercial buildings to maybe, let us almost sneak in housing behind it that doesn't change how people view it, but all of a sudden we have, 100, 150 new units. Now I understand there's a lot of other pieces involved with getting there, but I think it's something we're the only town in the inner ring here who has room to build. Everybody else is jammed up. They don't have any more space. It feels like a loss of an opportunity for us to not do something with it. And so that's why especially when we get on this, I wanted to step in because I feel like this is a spot where it's not a huge impact. We're not taking another agricultural space and turning it into a development. This is already developed area, but we can use it smarter. And those office buildings, it's not coming back. I can tell you this professionally. It's just, it's done. It's a buggy whip factory in the era of the automobile. And so I think it's, we don't want to lose an opportunity. I get that, but how long do you throw good money after bad before we say, we missed, it didn't work. And maybe we can move on to kind of use that space to go a next step. Thank you.
I think I've captured thoughts from most everyone on this particular question. Sarita, I don't think I actually heard from you on this particular one. You had a lot of head nodding and some agreeing,
Exit
but
16.
yeah,
This was my idea.
I just want to.
Yeah,
I just want
started
to
a long
get it
time
on the
ago.
record if that's true. So just
Yes,
going through the list.
I was thinking of it as I guess it's not infill, because infill is where you're building. I don't know what you call it when you have empty space and you fill it with housing.
Change of occupancy.
Change of occupancy. And I think with the double diamond and the road that Winooski is, coming up almost to the bridge there, I just think, again, there'll be sidewalks, people will be able to walk and cross, with the they're thinking about biking, how to biking paths and walking paths with the double diamond is. So there will be opportunities for people to cross. And, I just keep thinking of being more mobile in terms of biking and being able to walk to places. I love that idea of, I feel like Colchester is so spread out right now. I'd love to have these areas where people, there was a community and a neighborhood and maybe a movie theater and a restaurant where they could just walk and, build a sense of community, because it's hard here, because again, like you said, Winooski was our center. And we don't have that. So I just think this idea of little villages, creating not a lot of them, but just having places where people can live and work and shop and recreate and have entertainment and, maybe be able to walk, maybe not in the winter, but, get to know their neighbors and, definitely form a sense of community.
Vlad, did you weigh in on this one?
I think, honestly, there's definitely, I see the vision for adding housing to the lower floors and stuff, but I think it's going to create another Costco entrance if you put that many, if you start doing residential development in there, you're just going to be heading traffic to an already over congested area. And, we're spending all the money on doing the converted, whatever, the diamond intersection there, and then you're just increasing that much more traffic over there. So it's
What about the other side of the road?
yeah, I don't know. I
Water
just don't
Tower
see
Hill
it.
area?
That's what I'm saying for the Water Tower Hill. I wouldn't.
What's with that quarry? What's going on there?
It's
They
been there for
are
a long time.
still
Is it
successful.
under operation?
I don't
Oh,
see
yeah.
I don't see them
that thing's
closing
a rock
anytime
ship.
soon.
Yeah. Just saying it's
I just think it kind of separates residential,
Yeah,
the east side,
For a little while.
to Sunderland
Yeah.
Woods. It's kind of like
Now
a
they
nice
100 years.
separation of
Okay.
not having any kind of residential. And I understand it's the area is suffering with open spaces, but at the same time redoing everything, and then you're gonna have to create a whole new zoning regulations for all the buildings and converting them, and fire safety and parking. And I just see it being a whole plan of its own kind of for a lot of it.
I'm hearing that traffic congestion is one of your biggest fears.
Not necessarily for the biggest fear. I just think that it's a commercial space, and then it's are we doing the whole Water Tower Hill, or are we going to include Ravi's, and we're going to include the Green Mountain, where Green Mountain Power is and everything else over there. And then it's kind of one of those things, you start putting area was designated for commercial, you start doing residential in there, all of a sudden it's the quarry is too loud. There's enough people that are saying, hey, the quarry needs to cut down on hours, or this business over here is they got too many lights on, or the storage facility has they need to put a screening around it because the lights are keeping people awake. I think that there's a lot of undermining facts, and keep commercial, and you have residential areas, like I said, on both ends of it. But I think there's other, the growth center that we're doing commercial, small commercial and residential. Keeping offices downstairs with residential upstairs. If you do that over there, I don't think the building or the spaces were designed for that to begin with.
So if we did an exercise and I gave you 500 Monopoly houses, and I said find a place in Colchester to put them,
Do I have enough time for that?
You're talking about the
Make
little
them
red
big.
ones, the hotels, right?
Yeah,
the big
the
ones.
hotels. We'll go with the hotels. So we don't have to do the math. I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I heard you say earlier, some of the ag lands, those are changing. It's okay for development there. But so if I gave you these 500 units, you wouldn't put any in that exit 16 area, but you're comfortable putting them out on East Road and
I think so, just for the overall infrastructure.
Middle Road
and the way, because you got.
do you think those roads can handle traffic
I don't
better
think they
than?
can.
I don't
I
think-
think you
I
can
don't think
expand
they
on
can.
them. I don't think that you can blast any more ledge to create a larger interstate access. And when you have 2 miles of traffic, every single day, that's that can't get in and out. I think that, you know,
Maybe that
anymore.
needs to be our next exercise. We're gonna get
Yeah.
a monopoly houses. And we're gonna put a big map and I'm gonna give them to you just like we did with the,
I suggest tabling the discussion for that one.
and, no, you'll do it after I'm
Yeah.
gone.
I mean, there's going to be plenty of room at the rec center
Yeah.
at the next meeting.
We're gonna lay out maps and we're gonna give you houses and we're gonna say, where do you want them? If you gotta put them somewhere, where are they going?
Right. And my feeling about the agricultural lands is that's what we're losing. That's where all the housing development since the 1990s is gone, is agricultural lands.
Like the argument's the same if we don't have offices and they're not coming, if agricultural land isn't being worked. That's how we could easily just slip into
Exactly.
this housing thing
But-
easily.
I don't want
One-
to give up ag. I want to really try to protect ag lands.
One of the
it's being worked as
reasons the
What
ag,
if it's no longer being worked as ag?
It's not being
Yeah.
worked
No,
You're
out.
it's
paying your
not.
taxes.
it's not just the ag though, it's the wildlife. It's the wildlife corridors that come across those lands. So somehow there has to be a balance to
Oh,
protect that.
But doing, you know,
I get it.
cutting of land, you know, doing 10 acres with a house and then, you know, cutting a road in the driveway and then doing another 10 acres, cutting a road in, I think that's more disturbing to the wildlife. And
Well, I can kind of agree to that. But
so,
I think one of the charm of Colchester is, not only just the lake, but it's also some of our open lands. And we're beginning to lose it. It's
oh, absolutely.
eating
Let me
away.
ask you this for the Water Tower Hill. This is another thing that kind of annoys me. Would you do condos where people can build equity? Or would you say, yeah, you can have it, but you can have apartments? Because we have a lot of apartments that are affordable, but
They're not
you
really.
I'm gonna let you
never-
not
Are they-
answer
are they
that
affordable?
because state law does not allow us to draw a distinction between
Yeah.
rentals and ownership.
So if we
I
have
think
a
it's-
building up Water Tower Hill, we allow housing.
Yep.
We cannot enforce whether it's a rental or a condo.
You could not.
Okay, that answers that question.
It's usually
Yeah.
driven by developers
Just
and marketers, what people want. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how it all
Yeah.
comes about anyway.
Another topic. for
That's good to
is
know.
If it's
If that's-
appropriate for it, but separation of definitions
Questions
like
off the
affordable housing for building affordable housing and subsidized housing, somehow separating the two visions, because I think like they're blended together in the town plan for the whole affordability aspect. I think that there should be a separation for what the vision is for actually, giving incentives to developers building affordable first time, housing versus saying that it's we want affordable housing, but what do we really want? Do we want new housing or do we want more rental spaces that are, subsidized to allow, lower income families to move in kind of deal. So that's something that should be, I think, separated in the town plan and kind of have more of an outline and two separate visions for it.
I just think we need more people here. I mean, really, I just think this conversation, five of us cannot be making these decisions.
Yeah, we will.
Oh, we got a question.
Yeah.
We will have more people.
Yeah, come on. Go.
Sorry, but if you're gonna look at the distinction between affordable, can you also consider workforce? Because workforce is not always the
Oh, absolutely.
first-time home buyer.
Yep.
It's the family with 2 kids and a dog
Yep.
that can't afford the next step. So I ask
Absolutely.
that you look at workforce out.
No, absolutely, but that's where I want the separation, opportunities for people to buy in Colchester.
Yeah.
Because Colchester in general is a bedroom community more than anything. I mean, we struggle to attract businesses here, to your point, for various reasons with the regulations, restrictions, types of businesses that are allowed to be in certain areas, types of businesses that are allowed to expand. And I think that's not attractive to a lot of businesses that are looking for spaces in Colchester, period. We talk about business friendly, but what are we actually doing to, incentivize businesses to come to Colchester and not go to Williston where there's, 10 other stores that open up and they're being successful with it. We don't have the support, we don't have the restaurants, we don't have, like if the store is opening, if we're opening a grocery store, it's like, okay, we're going to have a grocery store, but if we're opening up electronics store or whatever, there's nowhere for people to go and eat. We have a couple of small shops to stop in. But it's a whole conversation for how do we structure the incentives for the businesses in Colchester and what areas and what kind of businesses are permissible in certain areas. I mean, that's big. So
I think you're right, Kathy. From what I've heard, like, I was in a couple of housing conferences, and they were saying that it's middle income housing that is
Totally.
lacking.
I sit on the same regional affairs that Evan does, and the first they brought several of us from all over Chittenden County, and we went around the room, and 75% of people in our first meeting 2 years ago was safety because of what was going down in Burlington. Several people said affordable housing. I was the only person out of 15 or 20 that said workforce housing. That's what we need is workforce. We have CHG, they're doing a great job. We need workforce housing.
Absolutely. Now, 2 years later, every discussion we have about housing, that's it. And when it comes to the affordable, I think we missed the boat. A lot of people people don't know what affordable means in Vermont. People think an affordable home is $180,000 before rent. It's not, and both by definition legally and by just practicality. But there's a concept called filtering, which is that, basically if you build it, it will come. And, I ran into this issue. I was working on a project up in the Kingdom, but they were trying to find housing for doctors for the hospital. People coming in from all over the country with $1 million budget. There were 0 homes in that price range. So what did they do? They said, okay, we'll buy that $800,000 house. But I need to make sure I get the kids into school on time, so I'm going to overbid it by $70,000. They're still under their budget, but now the entire floor of the town has come up. I think a lot of times we get a little too caught up on how do we build a cheap house or affordable or whatever you want to call it. And we're just missing the fact that just build more units and everything will ease because those upward pressures will start to come off. And not to mention, it's good for the town that we are attracting a spectrum, right, of earners, of families. And I think sometimes it's easy to get laser focused on which housing you're building and you end up not building housing. So I think that's something that we need to be careful of in this town. Absolutely, but kind of like what you're building housing for, for the workforce, like you're saying. Look at Burlington. How many buildings went up by the orphanage, and how many of them are vacant? You know what I mean? The construction is stopping. Burlington in general. All the high rises going in, and how many of them are full? So we're going to have a bunch of empty apartments. Nobody wants to live there for various reasons. So we don't want to have the same thing happening here. We'll build these 4 or 5 story, complexes, and then, nobody wants to rent them because people want to, have some sort of equity in what they're doing. So again, how do you provide, something for, for the units? How do you get the cost of land down per unit? Because that's the biggest thing for a developer. If they're buying, a 10-acre parcel, how, is it 40,000 per unit, 60,000 per unit, the cost of land? I mean, those are the things to kind of consider, and that's going to be which way the development is going to go. Are you going to have a $650,000 condo, or are you going to have a $350,000 one bedroom? You know what I mean, with a garage downstairs. What kind of individuals are you attracting? And we're not building anything. We're building essentially spec houses. I mean, you drive around, all the neighborhoods are the same. The price range is the same. It's just a matter of who can afford it. In this end of town, because the other part of town is $50,000 cheaper. So it's the same style housing being built.
So in an effort to move us on, I'm going to ask, sort of one last question on housing, and it's unrelated to where and what. But are there other themes, other things that come up with housing that you want to add as a last thought? So for example, something that I hear, and I've sort of heard undertones of it a little bit as everyone has talked, but something we hear, and this is just one example, is that, okay, it's one thing to build a house, but we need to be thinking to the future. Are we building these houses in such a way that we're stopping development of more houses later? So like inefficient use of land. So if you do decide that East Road or Middle Road or Mill Pond Road, any of these ag lands should be opened up to housing, or even Water Tower Hill, or a different area of town. What are things that we want to continue to be cautious of? So if you do say, sure, let's go from 10-acre zoning to you can now have 1 unit on every acre. Is it enough to talk about density, or are there other things that you're worried about? I heard Rebecca mention wildlife corridors and stuff like that. So as you consider where new housing goes, what other themes about housing do you think about or worry about? Or I've heard traffic, I've heard wildlife, I've heard even the aesthetics of open space, right? If you have these areas and people are used to sort of feeling like Colchester has this rural space, this open space where you can see the green fields, whether they're farmed or not, that there's some value in that. So maybe you're not worried about that, but tell me anything.
Smart growth, the whole principles of smart growth. I mean, the housing across from Airport Park, I love that housing. I know it's ranch housing and stuff like that, but I feel like there's a neighborhood there and people know each other and kids are riding around on their bikes. And, for me, it's, in the end, I would want a sense of community. I mean, just, really try to think of that. How do we help people create that community by where they live?
Build more of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I mean, I just like those neighborhoods. They're like kind of old, they're 1950s, but I really like them because,
100%.
the roads are wide and everybody I love how people take care of their property here. I think everybody is very proud, but again, I think Colchester is like boroughs to me, as opposed to, and I just think the more we can create spaces that bring people together and make it easy to ride their bike or walk, or, that kind of is intentional so that people cross paths with one another and create neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. That's what I would want. I mean, and I'm just one person, I don't know, but I'm just wondering, are there any, does the planning, do you have the money for a consultant? Or can we write a grant for a consultant, to kind of listen to these ideas and then be kind of thinking about what this design would look like, eventually, when we get through our discussion, and just show maybe 2 or 3 different designs, and just, we could change it, we could keep moving it, but, there are people out there, what are they called?
And most communities do utilize those services.
Right.
It is not my experience that Colchester desires the use of that, but
I would like one.
But that is,
what we're looking at would be nice too.
yeah.
It's hard to get a
Well,
picture.
that's something we'll let you follow up on.
So who
with
do
Zach.
we need to go speak to? I mean, but are there grants from the regional planning to help us design?
Yeah. So every year, it's a competitive process, but every year the state uses federal funds to allocate to what we call a municipal planning grant. A municipal planning grant has a wide range of topics that you can pursue. Everything from we need help writing our plan to we want to do a housing affordability plan to so there's a lot of potential topics that you can use a municipal planning grant. That comes up once a year. There's a relatively short window of 4 weeks roughly to put together a grant. Well, maybe 5 or 6. They've gotten a little better. But it is competitive. You're not guaranteed. There are criteria that are used to rate you based on sort of what you currently have in your governance structure and in your, whether you have an adopted town plan. The timing on that is interesting because I think, well, we won't be out of date. The next municipal planning grant cycle usually starts in November or so and wraps up in January, mid to late January usually. It's always weird timing because it's like it's the holidays. Who's working on grants? But they're out there. There's probably even others, but that's the most common one.
I mean, I just can't imagine not having. And I think Rebecca could be very helpful. and kind of looking at the big picture, in terms of the design. But I just can't imagine that we would do that on our own. I mean, I would really like to have someone that has the ability to design what we're conceptualizing, or as we get closer to.
Yeah, I will say planning services can be fairly expensive, and they've only gone up in more recent years. But yeah, sir, a lot of communities do utilize that grant.
Yeah,
for a
and
variety
just to
of
go
things.
along with that, the costs of consultants have gone up, and the municipal planning grant maximum award has not.
No,
Do you know what the award is?
I don't know the exact number, but it's pretty low.
It's
I want to say
around
it's
30,000. I
20,
think they're up to
30,000.
30 now.
All right.
But the pot, as Zach said, the pot hasn't gotten bigger, so it's much more competitive than it ever used to be. It used to be only a few people might not get selected, and now you really have.
Well,
It's
let's
tough.
just think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's someone that lives in Colchester that would.
Bit of foreshadowing. When Kathy Ann is no longer sitting in that chair and we're moving on to neighborhood discussions, I might challenge you all to maybe put on that hat. Because
So apply for the grants.
no.
Have a vision.
How do you foster community in these different parts of Colchester? What's working in some of these neighborhoods? Could more housing be integrated in these? Think about all the different themes, because ultimately you might not need to make the decision now, but having some thought in the plan may set you up to be more competitive if that grant is pursued in the future.
I think, again, like, I know we don't have any control, but if without public engagement, I mean, it's so concerning to me that we don't have public engagement, because through public engagement, I think we get really good ideas, listening to other people, and we'll start seeing trends about what maybe the majority of Colchester residents hope Colchester looks like in 15 or 20 years. But this is a flawed process. I'm not blaming anybody, but without public engagement, it's a really flawed process.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have different areas of Colchester, and people have, they choose to live in different areas of Colchester. They have completely different ideas. Some want community, they don't want to see their neighbor. And that's the beautiful thing with Colchester. You can have 100 acres, you can have a quarter-acre lot. So that's I think it's a lot of that is going to be in individual areas to see what the residents of that particular area of Colchester want to see continue to happen in their
If they
backyard,
don't get
essentially.
engaged, won't they be surprised when they see it develop?
They usually are. They usually are. But last time, didn't we had the neighborhoods come in.
Yeah.
We had a mix, but when we said that this is going to be, Airport Park area, people showed up.
Yeah.
When I knew it was their area.
Yeah.
That was going to be up for discussion.
Maybe that's what we should do, is meet in different parts of Colchester. And hold
Yeah, and scare them. Say, hey, we're going to be putting a large sand pit in your backyard. They'll show up. They'll show up.
I'm gonna, I did ask Rich if I could write a letter from the Planning Commission, just again, asking people to participate in this process. And I would, show you a draft and stuff before I put it out. But this doesn't seem at all like the right process. I mean,
This is more the general. Maybe when we get into some of the chapters about the specific. Plus, we have a very aware board. Everybody has a different opinion.
I know, but it's,
has
we
a
have 70,000 people here that, have 17,000 different ideas.
And still only 2,500 vote. So it's just the way.
17,000 are kids.
Yeah, that's right. So it's just the way it is.
Give some kind of incentive. So.
Yeah.
All right. Any? No, I'm not asking for last thoughts. I'm moving on.
Okay.
You'll thank me later.
Yeah.
These discussions aren't done. You're of course welcome to bring them up at any point, but just to get us through tonight.
I'm going to work on it.
All right.
Public engagement.
So who we are. I did not list in any of my numbers how many people are voting, but it's a very good thing to point out. But it sort of tracks across the region too, so it's not like it's Colchester. All right, so let me give you some updates on our demographics. I love to nerd out about this stuff.
That one at all.
All right, so here's our population charting. Now this one goes back a lot further because it's something people have always kept track of. I mean, population is just, there's always been some record of who. It may not have been where they live or what they live in, but or what they're paying for rent, but you know, back in 1800 we had 137 people. But there were, you know, we boomed and climbed fast. I'm not entirely sure what is representing this big drop off just before the, oh, it's probably the war.
Oh,
Not in 19.
No.
Winooski was before that, wasn't it?
yeah, that would have been one, two.
Yeah, was that Winooski?
Winooski, I thought was. Oh, who's the historian in the room? When did we lose Winooski? Maybe
Maybe not.
1922.
There you go.
1922.
There you go.
So
It's-
maybe.
Anybody taking the census will catch up.
Yeah, that makes sense. So 1920. Whoop. So there goes Winooski. There's our.
Lots of mile square, large population.
Yeah.
There's Winooski.
I didn't
But we
see
started to climb again, and then you had this really steep. I mean, called boomers for a reason. Look at your boom. So this tracks with, you know, I mean, obviously this one here is unique to Colchester. But this sort of rise that happened between the 50s and 2000, pretty common in most demographics that you're going to see everywhere. But it is sort of fun to look at. So there we are. Things are starting to, since 2000, they've leveled off quite a bit. And you could say that some of that is because of, you know, lack of housing, but it's also following regional estate trends and national trends. So it's a little bit of both.
Voted the new place in Severance Corners.
How many people live there?
Will live there.
Like in all the quadrants combined, or
Roughly.
Well, we know the northwest quadrant, it's not going to be so big because you just can't build it.
Northeast has about 600, roughly, give or take, units approved.
Well, I mean, planned.
Planned,
Planned.
not approved.
Planned.
Not approved, but that could fit. So when we say planned,
Then you look at that 1-2 bedrooms demographics, start to expand that number a bit.
yeah, and we are seeing a change in what unit types are too. So, you know, I was just out at Sunderland Farms last week, and they're building smaller and smaller units because they are seeing singles and couples who want an office, so maybe it's a 2-bedroom unit, but it's getting increasingly difficult to find a 3-bedroom plus unit anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think there's any 3-bedroom units in Severance Corners. Looked into that recently.
On
All-
either, in
all
any of
1
the
and 2
quadrants.
bedrooms.
Mm.
And all the 2 bedrooms are generally over on the Severance Corners Village Center quadrant.
Usually when you get to 3 to 4 bedrooms, they want a house to their own, not in a big building.
Yeah. And there are some families over there. I follow the school bus most mornings, but not many. Really, not that many. But not non-existent. All right. So this looks like a red line, and it is because I wanted you to see what we were reporting on in the last plan and what we're reporting on now. So in 2010, so look at the red, 4th in the state, now 3rd, but that's kind of Essex's fault, not ours. So Essex had been combined, of course, and now they are not. So they're not ranking anywhere
Called
for a little while.
So with 10% of the county's population, what are we in, what do you call it, land-wise?
That's a good question. I
It's like 6.5%, 7%.
Of all of Chittenden County? Oh,
Tonight, Coach, you're-
I would have guessed it's higher because we are one of the largest in land
Yeah.
area.
I thought so too.
36 square miles, and the county is something significantly larger. Like, it's more or less than 10% of the county.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that. But I do want to point out, because remember that number I told you to hold on to earlier? We had 10.4% of the county's homes, 10.4% of the county's population. Double check those. They're actually accurate. There wasn't a typo
So it's like all of them, including like Buell's Gore.
of all the county, yeah. Yep, even Beals Gore.
That's like 4 people.
But it's a fair amount of land area.
I would have thought that would be higher.
Well, bigger than its population accounts for. Its population density is
You could drive in and out of Beals Gore extremely quickly.
is really low. So just sort of moving on. So this is stuff that this is language you will see. It's already in the draft plan, but it interests people. So natural population gain is when your births exceed your deaths, right? You probably heard a lot of people, even Elon Musk talking about population decline. Even if you take the, theatrics out of it, population decline, natural population decline is a thing, and it's everywhere, and Colchester is not exempt. And somewhere around, middle of 2016, 2017, we stopped having growth in our population, or growth that exceeded our death rates. And that net change is increasing every year. So as of last year, we lost more people, 508, than were born in Colchester. And we have no reason to believe that trend will not continue.
And that's a national trend and not
It
a
is.
long trend.
I don't know if it's like exactly the same year,
Right,
but generally the trend is
Right.
is about the same.
People are getting older.
People are getting
they're
older.
and I think we have the lowest birth rate in the country.
I read that
Vermont.
somewhere. Yeah. So just something to keep in mind. Our population is growing, but not because of birth replacement. So again, I give you sort of a red line or blue line here intentionally, because I want you to see the change. So in 2015, so we're talking about age groups, right? You just said we're an aging population. It's very true, and it's pretty significant in my mind. In 2015, the average, the median, age of residents was 34. Fast forward less than 10 years, it's now 39. And 5 may not seem like a big number, but when you're talking about demographic change like this, 5 years is enormous. It really is. You just don't see those types of increases. So in the county average, I have that up there too. That's increasing too, but not as fast. County average went from 36 to 37. And the state average, so we're young. I mean, that shouldn't surprise people. I mean, between, sometimes a lot of your college students will get counted in your census. And Burlington just attracts a younger population than probably some of the more rural counties in the state. And then, the state average of 43. So we're younger than the state average in Colchester. But we're quickly approaching it. We are increasing our age much faster than the state, county, and regional trends. Retirement age individuals, I think this is fascinating, make up, roughly 18% of the town's population. It was only 10% 10 years ago. So that's another indicator of an aging population. Now, the
It's
good
those
thing is
baby boomers again.
baby boomers, yeah.
Yep.
We
10
should have
years,
people
that's gonna
raise their hand,
change
tell
too.
us what, which age group they're in.
It should stay well, because most of us who are there can't retire.
If anybody came to town meeting day, you probably heard Amy Miner say that Colchester is one of the very, very few schools in Chittenden County, and I don't know if she said the state, but definitely in Chittenden County, where the enrollment is steady / growing.
Yeah.
Almost every other school, and you guys would know more, in the
Did
legislature.
she speak of that being Colchester growth or influx? There's a
She
huge
acknowledged that there was a fair amount of influx because
Yeah.
they do accept
Yeah.
bus students and lottery students or school choice students. But I think it was also the bubble of age groups for kids in Colchester.
Okay.
That both were growing. Less and less students are wishing to, those who do come here from Grand Isle or some other place where they don't have a high school, they're just not choosing to go as far as they used to, but also population growth. And we'll ask her a little bit about that, I think, at your next meeting too, but they keep up with demographic studies at the school district to understand where things are going. And but regionally, and it could happen in Colchester too, school enrollments are down. We're just not seeing the same bubble of kids, school age kids that we used to. So, so that's one place where Colchester is definitely bucking the trend. Population diversity. It's not a big number, but it's more than it used to be. So in 2010, we were at 4% non-white population. By 2020, we're up to 12%. That's a big jump. Again, 10 years, you usually don't see increases of that magnitude. So I think it's pretty big. These are self-reported, of course, but so we do have, refugee resettlement programs in the region. We do have, as we talked about it, some more affordable housing that might attract new Vermonters, new Americans. And there's probably a whole paragraph we could write on the whys, but just so you see the facts there. So we have a chapter in our plan. This was new to me, and sort of reading about this, I thought it was fascinating, but we actually do measure, not a chapter, a paragraph about special needs populations. So people, with special living arrangements or housing, elderly, disabled, and low income are included in a special needs category, even if they have no special needs. If you are considered elderly, you are special needs. So 2024, we were at 12%. That was up from 9%. And that's specific to just disabilities. Now, disability is not special needs. That's a subcategory. And then 7% of our residents living below the poverty line. In seniors, that's even higher. 53% of seniors living with a disability and 12% of seniors living below the poverty line. So I think a lot of people think that our retirees in Colchester are our wealthiest community members. And I think this is telling us that that's not necessarily true. We do have a lot of seniors living below that poverty line. And I would be surprised if that goes down rather than up. Not just Colchester. This is not a Colchester issue. Household size. We talked about this a little bit when we were talking about housing. So household size has been decreasing. That shouldn't surprise anyone between people having less children, between, the divorce and separation rate has increased in the last 10 years, or probably ever since the 60s, but definitely in the last 10 years. So more and more people are choosing to live alone or to live with a roommate, choosing not to have children. So it's not really a surprise. I think it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that the size of households is decreasing for a variety of reasons. 1 and 2 person households with residents exceeding 65 years continues to grow. Increase in renter households correlates with this trend of smaller households. We just talked about this. Renters are not going to buy, or 2-person households are less likely to buy 3, 4-bedroom homes. They may be also more likely to rent because affording that home with the median sale price of $500,000 is very difficult for a single person. And so a rented unit is more accessible to them. We're also seeing what is referred to, this is not me calling it this, I'm not trying to pass any judgment, but it is a statement or a term that comes from the census in traditional households. Traditional households are family households with 2 spouses and affiliated children. Those are decreasing. 25 years ago, 25% of our people living in units here were traditional households. Now that's 16%.
Well, is the housing developments that are rentals, because they're high density, is that kind of skewing the numbers? Because now we're getting more high density rental units versus homes?
I mean, possibly, but these are tracking with state and national trends. So I think it's just, again, the households just look different, regardless of where they're living. Again, more people choosing.
I understand that one.
People choosing not to have children, people who are divorced or separated from a spouse. That was one unit of 4 people in it, or more, or 3 or whatever. But now those are now 2 households with the same number of people, right? So, this is just very common in the national trends. I don't know about the exact numbers, but generally we are seeing a decrease in those larger households. Income. How much money are people making? Well, it's increasing. I mean, that's just inflation. But we do in Colchester exceed the county median and the state median income. County by just a little, which tracks is about what I would expect. I don't believe we are the wealthiest community in the county, but we probably account for where that county median is coming from. The state median, of course, your wages, what people are paying is going to decrease in your more rural areas. So generally not surprising. So household income has increased, but we're noting that that's not evenly distributed. Share of people earning $100,000 or more increased, but the share of people earning less than $35,000 also increased. So we talk about middle income, missing middle housing. The same thing is sort of for income. We are seeing more disparity between the top earners and the lowest earners, and less people in the middle. So we're seeing this expanding lower income, and we're seeing a change in sort of, that wealth gap that you hear about. That's what they're talking about when they talk about the wealth gap. Less middle income housing, or middle income earners. So to wrap this up, and these are things I don't need you to respond to today, but I gave you all a copy of the current chapter. That's going to have everything I'm showing you here. Vision, goals, objectives. You guys are pros by now. That's the part that starts the chapter. Those are sort of broad statements. I want you guys, as part of your homework, to go and look at these. You have a printed copy if you don't want to mark up your pretty book. And write some thoughts down on what these currently say. Do they capture your vision? Are they too strong, too weak? Have they changed? Is there something else you think is more inclusive in that vision? Sort of the same thing with goals. Does it say what you want to say? Do you want it to be, is it too strong? Do you want it to be stronger? Is it missing sort of a whole theme? And those are exercises we're going to be doing with all of the chapters. Now, these are not, yesterday you probably heard me use the word fluffy a lot. These are pretty like safe statements, I think. But it's up to you as to whether or not you like to keep it safe and broad or if you want to do something different. The end of the chapter, so those are what starts the chapter. At the end of the chapter, policies and actions. These are, I've asked you, before, these are the place where you're going to go through and say, well, we've already accomplished this, or, why do we even need to mention this? This is stuff we just do all the time. Or, hey, you totally missed something that we need to put here. We need to make sure X, Y, and Z related to cultural heritage, which is also in here. I didn't go over that tonight because not that much has changed. There's not a lot of updates to be made. I mean, cultural heritage is heritage. It's the past. But our policies and actions spend a lot of time on that part of it. Supporting our historic society and historical events. And so there's a lot of that. I think there's less in here about demographics, but so these are things I would encourage you. These are the things that are really the most important when somebody is quoting or citing your plan, policies, and actions. And in a perfect world, planners like me would sit down with you once a year and say, all right, here's the actions we committed to. Here's what we got to do. I admit that I have not done that with you. Got a lot else going on, don't we? So these are ones that are most likely to change in any course of a plan because they've either been achieved or you're like, what were we thinking 8 years ago? No, we don't want to do that. Or that's referencing something that doesn't even exist anymore. So action statements, I think, are where you're going to see your most change. It's so funny that this one was written pre-COVID because it stands out to me. Nobody was really frequently doing electronic access to much, and that sort of was the one good thing that came out of the pandemic, right? We were forced to sort of get more digital and more accessible. So that's your homework. I would encourage you to do it for all the chapters we've talked about to date. Take some time, sit down. We talked about economic development yesterday. Look in there, see if you have recommendations, look at your housing. We'll, of course, do our part. And, if anything is just completely updated, we'll fix those for you. But if it's not a policy item. So, for example, if it says, I'm in the town services section, for example, I think it says something about don't punch me, something about consolidation of the fire departments. Well, that's done. Whether you like it or not, it's done. So things like that, we just know to fix. It's not a policy thing. It's just a fact that has happened. But if there's policy parts of this, we really want you guys to be weighing in and telling us, like, I don't know. 5 of you felt that way, but no, we don't feel that way anymore. That's not important, or something, or hey, this is a great statement, but it's kind of weak. Like, yeah, we should consider being more diverse in the future. Okay. Is there something more specific that you want to say to that point? Or I'm making things up, but this is the opportunity. As we talked about a while ago, I encourage you as often as possible, like Williston did in their plan, reduce your shoulds and considers. And it's not that there's no place for them, but consider is about the weakest word that exists in any town plan. I do support certain other words that are not like because sometimes you have to do not a study, but you might want to really evaluate how many working farms there are in Colchester to determine a policy on ag lands, or obtain better information on wildlife corridors to help influence land use policy in rural areas. So those words aren't necessarily bad, but this plan, I think, greatly overuses consider, think about, shoulds. I know you guys are much more strong-willed and
We got to remember, we did work on this one.
well, but that was a huge, I think you guys, it was such a huge update
Yeah, it was.
that
It was.
you were doing so much big picture planning that like getting down to that was just like, let's just capture it. Let's make sure the thought is in there. And now is the time. It's like, let's bake the cake. You guys made the cake. This is just the frosting now, right? Now we're like the fine details. So yes, all the credit in the world to baking a really good cake.
It looked like the 3 top comments from the survey were why people love Colchester was because of the physical beauty. It all had to do with aesthetics, I thought, and land, the land, the combination of the lake and the land.
Recreation.
This one.
Kind of
Scenic beauty, yeah. Recreational opportunities, geographic location.
Most all cultures, no more than 3. So recreational opportunities, scenic beauty. So the natural, you get a sense that people, at least from this, again, it's a small sample, but it looks like they love the outdoors, the natural beauty, being able to recreate. That's kind of what I'm taking away from. Those are pretty impressive numbers, scenic beauty and natural resources. 214.
So we're calling it Lake and Land.
What?
I said that's why we're calling it Lake and Land.
Yes.
And that is backed up in the comments that I haven't yet processed, but I've read them all, but I haven't transferred them into a usable format yet. And that just comes across. The number of times the word lake is used is more than Colchester, I think, is used.
Interesting.
Yeah. People.
They love it so much more if they can find a place to live here. Afford to live here.
I think economic opportunity is the one that's overlooked.
The what?
Yeah.
Economic opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah.
It should be, you want to get housing, let's get some economic opportunity here. I think it's a combination.
People don't like our shopping access. We have Costco.
I know. It's always full.
It's the outskirts of the district.
That requires a membership.
Well, we have.
So here's a thought.
We got Winooski.
The other side of the water tower hill. Competition, right?
We have an Ace Hardware.
There you go.
But if
Yeah.
you have to go out and buy somebody a birthday present, there's no place around.
No, but I think that's how Colchester grew, though. It's a suburb of Burlington. That's how it grew. That's where we are.
You don't go to Costco to buy birthday presents?
I was not going there for one thing to say
There's a challenge.
ever.
Really? Well, they do it all the time. They end up $300.
I know.
It's perfect.
It's an expensive birthday present.
Yeah.
They got some great plants there right now.
Yes. My birthday's not till February, but feel free to get me a great plant from Costco for my birthday.
Well, thank
All
you
right.
for the work you're doing. Do the dates are pretty set, like in the dates that we're meeting?
Oh no. They are, but until they're not.
But we're good for the next 2 or 3 meetings, right?
Good for the next one.
Yeah. So, I don't know, to be honest with you. You guys all saw my email from last week. I don't know if you saw my email from today. So I'll put it on the record. So, as you know, I am departing. My last day here will be June 4th.
That makes me very sad, Kathy Ann.
Oh, thank you.
Makes me sad too. So are you going to be here for the June 2nd?
I will be, provided there is a June 2nd meeting. But we do want to be aware. So I sent you an email tonight that Zach will begin as the planning director on June 4th. We'll figure out how that's going to be a fun day.
Yeah,
See?
There you go.
You gotta follow the bitter pill with the really good sweet. You know?
Is he nervous? Or is he planning?
Oh, there you go.
Inspiring.
But we do, and while Zach is so capable of doing all of this, we do have to acknowledge that just the workload alone is going to bring challenges. Work is underway to post a job to backfill and keep the staff at the same number, but that takes time. I mean, hiring, when we talk about economic development, we talk about housing, we talk about everything else. It is really hard to hire new staff.
One of the challenges will be DRB is in their permitting season.
Is in
Permitting season, yeah, the hay is ready for that.
it's a busy time.
And it's a lot of work and it has statutory deadlines.
Yeah.
So it's not something you can just drop.
Right.
Same thing with our day-to-day work. We can't just not do permits. So while nobody wants the town plan to be the thing that has to have less staff hours, the reality is if there's only so many, we have to meet our statutory obligations first. So I don't know, and I may never know. You can call me up and let me know later. I don't know what the impact of that staffing change will have on this plan. As soon as we know, we will let you know. As soon as Zach knows, he'll let you know. But right now, we just don't know. So stay tuned, stay
So
flexible.
what happens if we don't meet the March 2027
We
deadline?
can pull an extension.
Yeah.
I think
We can pull an extension. We can ask.
I think there's a built-in extension.
Not really, but you don't like cease to exist. You don't.
Right.
Do you want to talk to that?
I mean, those items that Kathy had brought up in her slideshow, those are the ones that, would be at risk, right? For example, municipal planning grants, they don't open until November. So you have some buffer time there. State designation programs, if a building doesn't come in that needs Act 250 approval within like 2 months, you have a little bit of flexibility there. It's not like, you get booted out of the program, for example. It's just your benefits get paused. That being said, I don't want to be in the business of refunding impact fees. That sounds really miserable. So, I think any extension, I think, would be minimal if it occurs, just because it's not, you don't want to miss out on things like bicycle and pedestrian facilities funding if that does align in the spring. I believe there is an extension process, but it's like a readoption process. Given where we're at, I don't know if that's really on the table for us.
All things we would look into for you. I think that the takeaway is there's no desire to artificially delay this process. We have great momentum going, even if people don't come. You're shoulder deep in thinking about things. And so, to put any of that on a long pause would really put that at risk. But we have to just also acknowledge the reality of staffing the department. And we may know more, in the next few weeks or months as we know what the staffing looks like. Even if you hire somebody great, they still have to be trained up. And it's just a matter of getting the work done. And in the meantime, with all that, you have other staff that take vacations, other staffs that, you know, are out, or it's a process, and not an ideal one. This is not where, you know, when I wrote this schedule, I planned to be here for all of them. Although, you know, it's not terribly a coincidence that some of the less fun ones are at the end.
No, what was 100% no.
Throw me under the
Zach
bus.
would be back from paternity leave for the not as.
Oh yeah, that was entirely
That
planned.
was very intentional.
Go back to that schedule, yeah.
Is
That's on the planning, that's on the planning,
It's on our webpage.
it's on your webpage, right?
Yeah.
It does say subject to change like 8
Yeah.
times on that page.
Yeah,
So,
I even put it in pink so it would catch some people's.
and I think, you know, from the staff perspective, you know, of course, we'll keep the development review process going. I'm very familiar with that process. So hopefully, you know, that is efficient. But yeah, it is a busy season, and I don't think there is an intent to pause this process.
I
So
won't be here the second, just so you know.
I'm glad you brought that
No,
up because Rich is not going to be here, so I
No,
should
I'm
do
not
a
gonna be
quorum check.
Oh,
What day?
Second.
June
June
2nd.
2nd.
I would love to stay somewhere.
All right, Rebecca and Vlad, because you will be
That should be good.
okay.
Okay.
Because we'll have to cancel the meeting if you cannot attend. If anything changes between now and then, let me know as early as possible. June 2nd, yeah.
Here's my real job. Emailing me, asking when my last day of the legislature term. So I have to go back.
Do you have an end date?
What's that?
Do you guys have a close date?
No.
No.
I don't think there's gonna be a veto session. So.
But that's in late June.
Yeah, so, you know, even by the 19th, we may have more information for you. We'll see, but we're going to keep plugging while we can.
Okay.
I
Right
might be
up
gone
tonight.
sometime in July or August for vacation. I don't know. I don't have dates yet.
August 4th is might be a fun one, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
I think you'll get your community participation for that one.
Yeah. Could be fun.
Oh,
You might
yeah.
want to catch that one online.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
a,
people on a Marble Island.
Yeah, it's on
They're really
it's the
there's
village.
a lot of stuff being
It's all the
built up
village.
there. I can't believe some of the lots they're building on.
A Marble
Pure
Island.
chunks of rock, but they build on them.
Yeah.
I just saw one sell literally on a cliff.
Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So we want to move on. Finish up. Okay. So,
Oh, I make a
Been
motion
odd
that
timing.
we adjourn.
oh, not yet.
No, not yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
minutes. Do the minutes.
Oh, the minutes.
Minute motion.
Make a motion to accept them.
Okay, second. Okay.
One of us will say.
Okay, all approved? Aye. Staff report, miscellaneous, I think we ate through that.
Okay. Now I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah, I think we kind of did it. It was
Yeah.
just me giving you guys updates.
Okay. All right,
You want
all
that
in
one?
favor, aye. We're done.
I have